What's up, guys? We are here at Club Patio. Just kidding, it's just my porch. It's got some Christmas lights and tiki torches, so it makes a nice little ambiance at night when we're just hanging out. But I have some stuff I wanted to show you guys that I just picked up. What do we have here? What do we have here? Oh man, I picked up my rotating assembly from Matt Miller up at Miller Engines, and yeah, he hooked me up, balanced everything. The rods, Eagle rods. Yeah, it's Eagle crank right there. Eagle crank and rods. Here's where he took weight out of it to balance it. Eagle's not the greatest quality stuff, but it's plenty good for what I want to do. I mean, it made 1,000 horsepower and lasted, 9, almost 10 years almost. So, yeah, like there's other companies that'll make, like, for instance, Cali's. There's one called the Dragon Slayer. It's like $1,500 for a crank that's good for like 1,500 horsepower. But when you're messing around with like stock block stuff, you're gonna lift ahead before you have issues with the crank failing. So at that point you probably want like a 6-bolt block or something aftermarket. And here's the pistons. They're the same brand I had before. Wiseco is what I had before, and this is what I have now. The only difference is this is a flat top piston. Before I had a 4cc dish. And as you can see, this coating here was all worn out on my old ones. That happens because of the stroker. I think I went over that. The stroke. What happens with the strokers is a 4-inch stroke crank. So what happens is the piston comes out of the bore, like the cylinder liners. Well, I mean, it's an iron block, so there's no liners, but the cylinder bores are only so long, and when you put a stroker crank in it, the piston tends to come down way far out of the bore, and then on its way up it tends to rock to the side a little bit, and then that'll wear this out on the skirt real bad. They've said it happens, and I believe it happens, but like judging on the amount of wear my pistons had after 10 years and probably 50,000 miles and countless dyno runs and street racing and burnouts and this and that, I don't think they were that bad. The bores themselves were not that bad either. They still had hash marks on them. So we just cleaned it up a little bit with like a little hone just to break the glaze on them. And so it's still a 5 thousandths over piston. That's what the X05 is. 005 right there, bang. So it's 5 thousandths over. When I originally got the motor, they didn't offer a standard piston because 10 years ago when I got the motor, it still had hash marks on the cylinders then too, and it had like 70,000 miles on it. So it's a 5 thousandths over piston, 4-inch stroke, comes out to 403 cubic inch, and this flat top is going to bump my compression up from before I was at like 9.3, and this is going to bump it up to like 10.6 with the cylinder heads I have and my head gasket thickness and everything. Comes out to about 10.5. So it's going to be more responsive. It'll probably spool quicker. It'll make more power sooner, if that makes any sense. Like, it'll make what my motor did before on 10 pounds, this might do on 6 or 7. You know what I mean? So I think I might be at the limit of my turbo, or something's limited to around 1,000. We hit a wall. We couldn't really get past that. Traction was an issue too, but it might be that turbo just can't, or something's holding it back. And so this, I expect it to make similar power, but at a lower boost level. Now they say with your higher compression, your tuning window shrinks a little bit, meaning that like If you mess up on the tune, it's not as forgiving, and you can blow things up easier than with a lower compression engine. But I'm not really worried about it. I mean, I was running the stock computer before, which was from like a 2000 Express van or whatever, Chevy van, and I did that mainly because it had the flex fuel capability. But it was a stock computer, and there was no safety features whatsoever. So now I'm going to be switching over to a Holley. I picked up a Holley Terminator, which is their new system. It's really cheap. It's like $1,000. I think it's like $1,400 if you need the transmission control, but I don't need that, so I'll have, because I have stick shift. So yeah, I picked up a Terminator used. The guy built a whole car. It was a new Edge Mustang with an LS and a turbo in it. Built the whole thing, had it almost done, and then something like happened in his family or something. He had to sell everything. So I picked it up for $700, and so yeah. Now the Holley has safety features built in. It'll have boost cut if your boost goes too high. If the fuel pressure goes too low, it'll cut the engine. If your oil pressure goes too low, it'll cut the engine. And thinking back on it, it might have been something that might have saved me in my last race. Like if the oil pressure went down, which I don't know because I wasn't watching my oil pressure gauge as I'm racing, but if it went low, something like the Holley might have saved it and cut the engine off and kept it from spinning a bearing, whatever. So I'm looking forward to that. Another thing that's kind of interesting too is like when you get higher compression, the motor just sounds nastier. Like I don't know if you guys have ever heard like a LS7 engine, like in like a C6 Z06. When they cam those things, they're like 11.5 to 1 compression, something crazy like that. But they just sound outright nasty. And the higher compression gives you that, and also cam too. You need a ginormous cam. But mine, it loped pretty good. But it would be even more now with this higher compression. But I think I'm going to lose that, mainly because I'm switching from the stock computer. And what the stock computer does is it'll, to control the idle, it uses a thing called adaptive idle. And basically it moves the timing around all over the place to try and maintain the target idle speed. And this Holley doesn't have that. So generally, your engines sound smoother running this Holley, which I'm not totally mad at. It's got a decent sized cam in it. And actually, it can be kind of annoying too if you're trying to putz around town and the thing just starts jerking back and forth and putzing. And then, it can make you look dumb too in a parking lot if you're trying to drive and it's jerking all around and you stall it. But yeah, so we'll see how it sounds when it starts and runs. We'll get the Holley all tuned up. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you my stuff I got. Eagle rods, Eagle crank, and Wiseco pistons. And also wanted to give a big shout out to Miller Engines. He hooked me up. I was trying to get a rotating assembly, and I found them. Some of them were cheaper than Miller Engines, but there's little things that you're not aware of, like they give you the crappier rod bolts. If you want the better rod bolts, another $200, and then they don't include the balancing. If you want to balance it, it's another $275. And then so when you add it all up, it was right there. They're all generally around the same price. The prices have gone up. Back in the day, I paid $2,300, I think, for a rotating assembly, and now they're like $400 more. It's just what it is. But Matt got me the parts. Like everybody I called, they could get. Well, Manly couldn't get any parts at all. Manly was sold out. They have trouble getting their shipments in. Texas Speed had the parts. They could have shipped them to me, but then I would need somebody to balance it. Their wait time for the balancing was 4 to 5 weeks. And I just didn't want to sit around and wait that long. I mean, my car's sitting at my brother's house. And so, yeah, everybody I called, they had a 3-week wait, 2-week wait, 3-week wait, And so Matt Happel, I asked him who his engine builder was and if he knew a guy. Because initially I was thinking of just cutting the crank. And I got to talking to Matt over at Miller Engines. And he's like, well, I can order it for you. and rotate it and get it all set up. And you know, I went that route just because it's it was just easier, man. I mean, everything came to him. He balanced it, and a couple days later, I picked it up. So yeah, that's the update for now, and we'll probably start on this tomorrow. I gotta talk to my brother and see if he's not too busy. We'll start slinging this motor together.